So then we are back with more understandings from the time of the Second Tabernacle services, where we find the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Israelic lineage. So then we can understand the time of the end. As per NatanYahu the prophet, we find layers of understanding of the spring feast, the autumn feast, and also the returning of the cities of the Messiah laid waste for many centuries. Please have it in mind, NatanYahu the prophet was murdered by the leaders of Israel. He was rejected, and Israel has truly murdered its own prophets. As the Messiah himself has stated, O Israel, Israel, you have then murdered the prophets that the Creator has sent you. Because of these, then, we analyze very cautiously these rejected prophecies and these prophets, because what we want is knowing what's coming in the future. However, there are ways and sections of the instructions where we should then be very cautious on how to interpret. Firstly then, let's analyze what the unfortunate situation went on in Israel a couple of days ago. That existing gangster of the Prime Minister has unfortunately won the election once more. And because of these, we understand prior of the results of the election, there was a great chance for Mr. Herzog to get the election, and Lapid also was involved with it. But then at the last minute, this gangster of the existing prime minister decided to go on the social networks. Then he was asking for votes and coming up with stories and junk, and unfortunately the people of Israel were then deceived once again. So then, let's make an evaluation in a very objective English way of doing trade with no influences of religion of any kind, not at this point at least, because the situation is very dire. Because of this election in Israel, and this truly scoundrel has taken on power once again, the news are showing he wants then continuing on building houses and developments on dangerous areas. So this is the first situation he is involving himself with, though they promised, they gave their word in United Nations that they would not do this. And these scoundrels, led by these re-elected PM, is then leading these gangsters. Second, he has picked a fight once again with the Palestinians. Israel has promised to work as much as they could in order to make sure the Palestinians would be then taken care of. So then, let's evaluate what is going on, because the economy of the world is in trouble. And as we English people, always objective and straightforward, we then analyze the situation as this situation in the Middle East, mostly regarding Israel, is then a powder keg of problems generated and enticed by its own prime minister. Understandably, security is very important. Nobody is negating the importance of security. However, these very psychic or psychotic individual, Prime Minister of Israel, he wants to entice more troubles regarding security. He is inventing problems, inventing situations, inventing ways of receiving more money from United States in order to satisfy his mongering desire for trouble, lack of security, and the enjoyment of triflings. These persons should never be entrusted with any kind of money from the Obama administration. save they talked the situation very thoroughly, in a very English way. Every situation must be scrutinized by its utmost, and then later decide if they are going to give a non-financial help to this country. We understand from the great news that are coming up, the nations of the world are organizing themselves and the economies are very bad. If you don't think the economies of the world are bad, either you are living in a cave or you don't care. Let's evaluate what's going on as far as a few days ago. We find then the exclusive information of IBM, a very important company, an American company, has then adopted Bitcoin technology for major trade. This truly is a great start regarding the linkages with the United States and this very form of monetary system not linked with the central bank. They are giving some values to these coins, but it lacks then the linkage with the central banks for the purposes of gathering taxes yet. And most importantly yet, linking up with the freighter's data. So then the taxes from each purchase then can be deducted and sent directly into the government's coffers. So then, this truly is a very important information and came out on the 12th of March of this month in a very important and known newspaper. The Reuters, a British newspaper, extremely reliable. And then the other news is related then with the Bitcoin and United Kingdom then regulating the digital exchange. This truly is absolutely amazing because they are a step further from organizing then the new system of China. As we understand, China has the most important e-trade system in the world. It is the e-trade of Alibaba, for instance also Taobao and many others. And China truly dominates 50% plus. Precisely 57% of the world's trade, China then leads. So then if we are humble enough to understand that more than half a person leads, then we should obviously be more conscientious of adopting a few systems of the East so then taxes can be secured. So then, let's evaluate what this means as far as what's going on in many countries. For instance, Brazil, this country is absolutely ruined. The word absolutely means simply absolutely. This country has no more economy. It has 100% failed. It is bankrupt. And because of such, the government itself is not adjusting. They are not concerned with, they are so voluminous with so many politicians, and the politics are so inflated with incompetent scoundrels. This country simply can't get a light of the resolution. So what can then the nations give to other nations as far as a hope of organizing their economies? And truly comes from purchases in the internet and computers and telephones, as China is doing in the northwest side of the country. If you make an analysis, it's an area related with the rural and plantations, and the development over there is very minimum, and then the government is encouraging them purchasing via computers and telephones because it generates more reliable roads and therefore more restaurants and more gasoline stations and infrastructuring then takes place. Sounds very obvious what other nations should be doing. So then the populations of the countries that are absolutely ruined, such as Brazil for instance, it is obviously my home country, but I do not belong to this country. because I have left this country many years ago and I became an English person, went to the United States and was, and yet would consider a colony of England. And the situation is purchasing via computers and telephones generates infrastructure. The problem is the culture in this country is very minimum. People are so endowed with a desire for paper money and they neglect the very weapon between them and the government. So then, there were manifests and protests that were then taking place in last Sunday, and then it amounted to nothing, because the people went to play, for instance, a game of whist, and they had nothing on the table to play with. They were simply complainers and groaners and moaners, and there was no plan to work with. And the most appalling situation is these people, they complain and they have no knowledge of what it takes to get the country straightened out. They have no objectiveness as far as what the country should be doing. And obviously, in turn, the government does not care. And they play out their own novels and they play around making faces, and it's very tough sometimes when the president earns roughly $45 an hour clean of everything else, and then watching the people then struggling so much, yet the country has no plan. However, we understand that the new system of China is coming, and the only way of receiving taxes is via the freighters' data. That's why then the Bitcoin being regulated is extremely important, because in case Mr. Obama decides to give money to this Eastern gangster known as Benjamin Netanyahu, unfortunately won the election because the people of Israel were weak and understand the importance of economy, then his rhetoric junk is going to be security, security, and security, and more securities, because Iran, this and the other, or because the Palestinians, this and the other, and then they're going to provoke other countries in order to get more money from the United States. And the United States, at times, have no character, and prints out the money and gives it away, and then they raise the price of the USD overseas, and the nations, they get worse trouble than ever. That's the short way, the way it works. So then, as responsible English people, we should make an analysis, and as it was said before, no country should give financial aid to Israel save from a very important talks in Parliament and scrutinizing every single section of it before releasing a non-financial way of helping this country. So then, great news. We understand the freighters are coming, and they should be used as a means of forcing the government work on infrastructure, because the people then can purchase via computers and telephones, forcing the government then to get to work, get their rears in gear, and get the infrastructure required done. So please stay tuned, much more coming up.